In his best-selling book, Moneyball, which was turned into a major motion picture starring Brad Pitt and Jonah Hill, Michael Lewis told the story of how data-driven analysis could win baseball games.
Using this equation on the upper left right here, I'm projecting that we need to win at least 99 games in order to make it to the postseason. We need to score at least 814 runs in order to win those games and allow no more than 645 runs.
In Michael Lewis' new book, he focuses on the biggest and most important data collector and analyzer in the world, the United States government, and what has happened to it under a president who says things like this today.
Have you read the UN report that's warning about climate change, regarding drastic action? It was given to me. I want to look at who drew it, which group drew it, because I can give you reports that are fabulous, but I can give you reports that aren't so good. But I will be looking at it, absolutely.
Joining us now, New York Times bestselling author Michael Lewis, whose new book is The Fifth Risk. Michael, with this book, you went where no one ever goes in Washington. You went inside the departments, energy, commerce, agriculture, to look at what's happening there now under the Trump administration. They are all massive data collectors, which is one of a category of person we see in all of your books, really. What did you find in there?
Well, the first thing, I was provoked. The Trump administration, the Obama administration, had essentially set up the best course ever created in how the federal government worked. 1,000 people had spent the better part of a year doing briefing books for all the departments of the government. And the idea was the Trump administration was to show up the next day.
Briefing books for the new government
for whoever it was.
The transition.
Yeah, and very non-ideological things.
Yeah.
I mean, an awful lot of it was going on is just technical matters.
Yeah.
You know, how to deal with the Zika virus if it reappears. Or how to manage the nuclear arsenal. I mean, these are management problems. And the idea was the day after the election, the Trump people were supposed to send hundreds of people into the departments. And Trump fired his transition team right after the election, and nobody showed up. Mm-hmm. So there were these courses to be taken in what was going on in these places that they never took. So that's the starting point for me. And what you find is he's electrified this material. I mean, the government has its problems already coming into the Trump administration. But a society that appreciated its government would never have elected such a man because he has absolutely no interest in any of it. And if there's a pattern to like what's going on in these places is that people with narrow financial interests in what's going on in them have been put in places where they can exert influence and for their own gain. Mm-hmm. But the other pattern is total neglect. I mean, half the positions in the administration have not been filled. Roughly 20% of the top 6,000 in civil servants have quit in the first year. So it's a crisis. It's a very slow-moving crisis, and it's like the crisis you don't pay attention to when you're paying attention to the day-to-day stuff, but it is the thing that's going to bite us.
I want to go back to what we just heard the president say today, which is what's his reaction to the UN report on climate change that was delivered to him this week? And he says to those reporters, "Oh, I'm absolutely going to read it." Now, your reporting seems to indicate there is very little chance the president's ever going to touch or see that document.
He doesn't seem to be that interested in the government. So the answer is that would seem unlikely that he's going to read the thing. But I think there's kind of a reason for it. I think that he has shied away from actually embracing his job, which is to run this operation. Right. It's not being run. It's being run in a very haphazard way. He tells himself a very simple story that it's basically, it'll run itself, or he doesn't have to think about it. If he were to collide with the actual information that's inside the government, it would be jarring for his worldview. I mean, I would just be I think we'd be overwhelmed by how enormous the task he's neglecting is, and that what we're talking about here, it's not just this thing, it's the society, it's the tool we have in the society to deal with the biggest problems we have, and it's the only tool, and he's basically letting it fall apart.
When you say there are all these unfilled jobs in the government, there's a lot of Republicans out there who think, great, government doesn't do anything worthwhile anyway in these departments like energy and commerce and agriculture. They don't do anything we care about. Let's not fill it up with bureaucrats and save those salaries.
Let's take a concrete example. All right, so Rick Perry, who's nominated to run the Energy Department, right? He now runs the Energy Department. He's one of those Republicans who said he's going to axe the Energy Department when he was on the campaign
trail. He wanted to get rid of it.
Get rid of it, but he couldn't remember the name, right? But the minute he actually collides with the Energy Department and asks, what does it do? Well, it manages the nuclear arsenal. You're going to get rid of that. It's managing massive nuclear waste cleanups around the country. It is basically a science project that the future of industry is going to be driven by the investments that they're making in basic scientific research. The idea of eliminating this, what happens with all these people who say we're just going to eliminate this stuff, they don't know anything about it.
Right.
The minute they go see what's going on in there, they see two things. One, it's mission critical, and two, it's attracted people who are really interested in mission. They're not there for the money, except for some of the Trump people. They're there because they care about the weather service, or they care about the census, or they care about maintaining the nuclear arsenal. And it's really kind of inspiring. I think that's what surprised me going into these places. These people are the best among us. I mean, they are the civil servants. We treat them like they're dead weight, but they should be respected like the military.
That is exactly what I felt in my experience with them when I was working in Washington. We have Hurricane Michael, named not after you, I hope, approaching tonight. We know that because of a division in the Commerce Department whose job it is to tell us how to prepare for and when to move when a hurricane
And they've gotten better and better at it. They've gotten better and better at it. I mean, that weather prediction has gotten steadily better. It's gotten steadily better in part because of the data that's been collected inside the National Weather Service and made available to a lot of geeks to hack away at it. And these people who are there in the Weather Service, they take their role, protecting life and property, very seriously. And I think when you back away from it, I think what people just kind of lose sight of is that the basic role of the government is to keep us safe. And it manages a portfolio of risks that are absolutely terrifying. And we just assume they're going to do that, even though all we do is kick them all the time. And if we have been doing that for as long as we've been doing that, and then you put a guy in charge of the thing who has no interest in managing it, we're asking for something bad to happen.
I think of your readership, when I think of your readership, I don't think of politics at all. I mean, you've written books about Wall Street, you've written books that are about universal sports appeal and interest. What do you anticipate in your readership from a Republican reader of your book versus a Democratic reader of your book?
I think the broad message that I think everybody would get if they paid attention is that if we were to moneyball the society, we would invest in the public sector. We have underinvested in it. We've got a workforce that there are 5 times more people over the age of 60 than there are under the age of 30. There's an equivalent thing going on with the technology in the government. You can't run an organization like that. And so I think that, what would be the difference between the Democrats' response? Everything gets so polarized. I mean, I suspect what will happen is Republicans get defensive and Democrats go, yeah. But what we need are candidates who can actually, like, the government doesn't sell itself. It's forbidden from selling itself. It doesn't market itself, with the exception of NASA and the military. We need people who can actually go explain to the citizens what this enterprise does, the Commerce Department, the Agriculture Department, and make them appreciate what it does so there's political support for what it does. And so when some bozo comes along and says he wants to be president, the first question everybody asks is, what are you going to do with this? Instead of just giving them a pass on that question.
Yeah, this is an invaluable book, a look at the way the government really works. Michael Lewis, The Fifth Risk. I don't have to hold it up. We got it on the screen. Michael, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Really appreciate it. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on the button below for more from The Last Word and the rest of MSNBC.